Welcome to NTD News. I'm Kevin Hogan. Let's have a look at today's top stories. Border Patrol arrests an illegal immigrant convicted of child sex offenses, and experts warn that some border crossers are renting children to get into the United States as family units. Arkansas is the first state to ban children from having gender reassignment surgery, but rights groups say they will fight the law in court. We break down the new election reforms in Georgia. The law has rules to increase security and transparency in elections. Does former President Trump think it goes far enough? A reporter asks President Joe Biden if he's spoken with the Chinese regime's leader about the origin of the virus. We'll hear Biden's response. Border Patrol agents in California arrested an illegal immigrant convicted of child sex offenses. Border Patrol says agents have arrested or removed 17 illegal immigrants convicted of or wanted on sexual offense charges since October in that sector alone.
Border Patrol said Tuesday their agents in California arrested an illegal alien previously convicted of raping a child. The 46-year-old man is a citizen of Mexico. Agents arrested him Monday afternoon after he entered the United States illegally. From record checks, agents found he was convicted of raping a minor in California in 2007. He was sentenced to 9 years in prison but was deported after 7 years. Now he's being charged as a convicted felon with re-entry after deportation. He faces up to 20 years in prison. And Texas and Louisiana are suing the Biden administration for allegedly refusing to take custody of illegal immigrants convicted of serious crimes. The states want to block 2 DHS memos issued early in Biden's term. The memos narrowed immigration enforcement to only 3 categories. The states argue those 3 categories don't include illegal immigrants with final orders of removal, drug offenses, or crimes of moral depravity. The lawsuit argues, as a consequence, dangerous criminal aliens are being released into local communities. The states want the court to declare parts of the memos unlawful and force federal authorities to take custody of criminal aliens. NTD reached out to the White House and ICE for comment but didn't immediately hear back. And experts warn that illegal immigrants may be renting children to cross the border. Former acting ICE Director Tom Homan said the Biden administration isn't using widespread DNA testing to find out if families are legitimate. He said, "When I was the ICE director, we had criminal investigations where children were being rented by cartels to pose as a family unit. Once they get released, they get sent back to Mexico and re-rented again. It happens." In February, Border Patrol apprehended almost 19,000 people in family units. March numbers are even higher. Right now, some areas are turning family units back because of health restrictions. Former acting Customs and Border Protection Commissioner Mark Morgan told the Epoch Times in late March, when the restrictions are lifted, he predicts the number of unaccompanied minors will decrease and family units will increase, and that the problem of renting children will become worse. NTD asked DHS and CBP what steps they're taking to make sure family units are legitimate. We didn't immediately hear back.
ICE just got back to us saying it's unable to comment on ongoing lawsuits, including Texas and Louisiana's lawsuit over President Biden's immigration policies. A reporter asks President Joe Biden if he's spoken with the Chinese regime's leader about the origin of the CCP virus. Biden says they haven't talked about it.
The reporter's question freezes Biden as he's leaving a press briefing.
Mr. President, you mentioned 554,064 American dead from COVID-19. A lot of families want to know how this happened, how it got here.
He notes that Biden has a long relationship with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. The reporter asks Biden if he spoke with Xi about reports that China misled the world at the start of the pandemic.
No, I have not had that conversation with Xi.
Biden says he hasn't. Many people note that China lied and misled the world about the virus. Biden drew scrutiny for not bringing it up. Former President Trump maintains that China was instrumental in spreading the virus around the world. He says they could have prevented it and told the UN that the world must hold China accountable. Secretary of State Antony Blinken was elusive when asked about holding China accountable. He says they're focused on preventing another pandemic. The World Health Organization released a controversial report about how the virus started. Critics say it's tainted by China's influence. Representative James Comer calls the WHO's report a product of China's propaganda machine. The U.S. is one of 14 nations questioning the report. They're calling for a transparent and independent investigation.
Arkansas is now the first state to ban children from having surgery to change their gender. State lawmakers overrode the governor's veto to pass the law. But now the American Civil Liberties Union promises a court battle. Arkansas's House and Senate voted overwhelmingly to pass the Save Adolescents from Experimentation Act. It bans healthcare workers from performing gender reassignment surgery on children or giving them transgender hormone treatments. Republican Governor Asa Hutchinson had vetoed the bill. He says it opens the door for the government to interfere in healthcare. He says that is not the role of government. Hutchinson says he would support the bill if it only banned surgery. He says children already getting treatment should be able to continue. The legislature overrode the governor's veto. They got a 2/3 majority in both chambers to pass the law. Critics of early gender-changing interventions say the procedures are irreversible and that most transgender children change their mind. New York Magazine says studies show about 80% of transgender children identify with their original gender again before adulthood. The Family Council released a statement supporting Arkansas's law. It says gender reassignment surgeries can leave children sterilized and scarred for life. The organization says no one knows the long-term effects of the procedures. Holly Dixon is the executive director of the American Civil Liberties Union of Arkansas. She calls the law a discriminatory crusade. She says it's illegal to deny medical treatment to someone because they're transgender. The union says it will fight the law in court. The law is set to take effect later this summer. We take a closer look at what's in Georgia's election law that Republicans recently passed. And former President Trump doubles down on his criticism of the new law, saying it doesn't go far enough. Here are the details.
Georgia's election law creates provisions for the security and integrity of elections in the state. It makes a hotline where Georgians can report illegal election activities and voter suppression. It also requires around-the-clock surveillance of ballot drop boxes. What's more, it calls for ballots to be printed on security paper for authentication. Also included in the 98-page law is a rule that makes it a felony for unauthorized people to handle ballots or unseal absentee ballot envelopes. And now Georgia voters are barred from applying for absentee ballots multiple times. And to Biden's dislike, it prohibits food or drinks from being given to voters in line. The law also bolsters transparency. It gives the Secretary of State the power to inspect absentee ballot envelopes, and it makes scanned ballot images public record. Also, an independent panel will review precincts that don't submit their results by 5 p.m. the day after the election. Some claim the bill makes it harder to vote, but while some provisions in the bill make it easier, others make it harder. For example, the bill does not change voting hours on Election Day, and it cuts the amount of time people have to apply for mail-in ballots just about in half. That's while it adds extra hours and days that the polls are open. On Tuesday, former President Trump renewed his criticism of the reforms. He issued a statement from his Save America PAC saying, "Georgia's election reform law is far too weak and soft to ensure real ballot integrity. Election Day is supposed to be Election Day, not Election Week or Election Month. Far too many days are given to vote. Too much mischief can happen during this very long period of time." Trump says the new law doesn't eliminate no-excuse mail-in voting, and he criticized it for removing signature verification.
Atlanta's mayor issues an order to diminish the impact of Georgia's election reform law. She believes the law restricts voting access for people of color and minorities. Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms directed the city's chief equity officer to develop a plan of action to make voting more accessible for Atlanta residents. The plan includes educating residents on where to register to vote and how to get the needed identification to vote. It also includes work with businesses and community leaders to create public service announcements that inform people of voting requirements. But some push back against these criticisms. Georgia officials say the law seeks to streamline vote counting procedures, ensure election integrity, and legal votes by requiring ID to vote by mail, for example. The bill also includes some provisions to expand voting access. You may have heard of the new voting bill, H.R. 1, that recently passed the House. Democrats call it an anti-corruption, pro-democracy move, but others say it's quite the opposite. Now, 2 leaders in South Carolina are speaking out. NTD's Christina Kim has more.
H.R. 1 is known as For the People Act, but Senator Lindsey Graham calls it an attempt by the radical left to take over every election system in the country.
This, to me, is a very serious attempt to alter the balance of power to centralize in the federal government a voting system that's ripe for fraud at the expense of every American who wants to vote fairly.
South Carolina's governor chimed in, saying it's hard to believe this bill is already passed in the House. He notes that absentee ballots could lead to voter fraud. He's had experience prosecuting cases about it.
Loosening the requirements on absentee voting to eliminate the integrity of that is bad enough. But this bill goes even farther.
Graham went into some areas of the bill he finds problematic.
It will take away the ability of a state to redistrict and send it up to the federal government. It institutionalizes ballot harvesting and requires mail-in voting as the way to go, that you'll get a ballot whether you want one or not.
The bill says voter ID laws disproportionately impact minority communities, so it bans requiring a witness signature on absentee ballots. Voters only need to sign a statement confirming that they are who they say they are. If states are required to accept this form of identification, that effectively gets rid of voter ID laws. Another section of H.R. 1 makes it so every small dollar donation to a political candidate is matched by taxpayer money by 600%. For example, if someone donates $200 to a candidate, this bill would have it so the government contributes $1,200. And Graham stands up to his critics.
They're calling all of us racist because we won't give in to this power grab. They play the race card morning, noon, and night.
Senator Graham says he wants every eligible voter to be able to vote, and he won't back down trying to fight for secure and fair elections. Christina Kim, NTD News.
The governor of Texas issued an executive order prohibiting vaccine passports. He said vaccines are always voluntary and never forced. Texas and Florida are the first states to ban them, and the Biden administration said it will not force Americans to carry them.
That is why I issued.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed an executive order Tuesday. It prohibits state agencies from creating a vaccine passport requirement. It also ensures individuals can receive services without having to show a receipt of a vaccination.
Government should not require any Texan to show proof of vaccination and reveal private health information just to go about their daily lives.
Abbott's move comes just days after Florida Governor Ron DeSantis issued a similar order. DeSantis is looking for the Florida legislature to make a law banning vaccine passports permanently. The concept of needing proof of vaccination has become a hot topic. Civil liberties groups say that would be a significant government overreach. Texas is about to surpass 13 million vaccine doses this week.
Those shots help slow the spread of COVID, reduce hospitalizations, and reduce fatalities. But, as I have said all along, these vaccines are always voluntary and never forced.
Abbott's order also targets organizations that receive public funds. They're no longer allowed to force customers to prove they've gotten the vaccine in order to receive service or enter any location. Abbott says Texans' lives are returning to normal as more people get the vaccine. The Biden administration said it will not require Americans to carry vaccine passports. And the White House said there will be no federal vaccination database. Press Secretary Jen Psaki said Americans' privacy rights should be protected so that these systems aren't used against people unfairly. The governors of Kansas and Missouri say they won't implement vaccine passports either. The mayor of North Las Vegas is making some unexpected changes. He's switching lanes from Democrat to Republican. Mayor John Lee said the Democratic Party isn't the party he knew, citing its lurch towards leftism in recent years. He says the party abandoned its traditional working-class base and is now catering to socialists and elitists. And while he held on, hoping the party would change, he says it didn't. His website says Nevada needs a switch and urges people to turn off the Democratic Socialists and turn on the light of liberty. Congressman Ted Budd is considering a run for the Senate. The seat he's going after is held by soon-to-be retired Senator Richard Burr. In his run for senator, Budd faces possible competition from Lara Trump. Budd is a three-term Republican congressman out of North Carolina. Before coming into office, the 49-year-old juggled the desire to pursue a religious career with an urge towards a public office position. Next year's North Carolina Senate race will be one of the nation's most closely watched contests. The winner could determine whether Democrats or Republicans control the upper chamber of Congress. And up next, residents in New York City neighborhood in shock when a huge fire raged through a 6-story apartment building, displacing more than 200 people. And a social worker recounts her mental health struggles and those of her patients over the past year. Find out how she's managed on NTD News. Hundreds of people are waiting to return home after an apartment fire broke out in New York City. NTD's Arian Pastar spoke to the shocked residents.
We're here in Queens, New York City, Jackson Heights to be exact, where an 8-alarm fire broke out. Now the fire broke out around 8 hours ago, and the crazy thing is the whole area, as you can see behind me, in front of me, everywhere is still full of smoke. And not only here, we actually arrived a few blocks away, and even there it's full of smoke. And so now we arrived at the building that actually caught the fire. You can see it right behind me. Behind the traffic light, there is a white light at the top of the building, and that's the apartment that caught the fire, according to other reports. So one apartment caught the fire, and then the guy fled his apartment, left the door open, and that's how the fire could spread. And according to those reports, the fire could have been prevented. It's, as I said, an 8-alarm fire, which is pretty high. Now the smoke is crazy. You can taste it in your mouth, it burns in your nose, it burns in your eyes. It's kind of like sitting at the wrong side of a bonfire, in my opinion. It's really strong.
I saw a whole bunch of smoke coming from that area, and then I look through here, I see a whole bunch of flames coming from the rooftop.
According to CBS, more than 20 people have been injured. No deaths have been reported so far. More than 400 firefighters showed up at the scene. And locals said they've never seen a fire like this before.
I have lived here my entire life, and I have never seen a fire like this, with this intensity, this length, and this much smoke.
My daughter is 5 years old, and she started crying because she thought it was my house.
A resident who lives a few blocks away told us that the smoke only got worse. That's even a few hours after the fire first broke out.
It's dense, and I had to close the windows because since 3, and I'm shocked of how much it's intensified in those, 5 hours.
According to reports, none of the injuries are life-threatening and no residents have been reported missing. Arian Pastar, NTD News, New York.
Pandemic news often focuses on the number of cases and deaths, but a year of lockdowns and social restrictions have also imposed a heavy psychological toll. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
Amina Woods is a social worker, a psychotherapist, and a single mother. She spent the past year helping her clients manage the unexpected effects of the pandemic. But Woods is also feeling the stress and anxiety caused by lockdowns and social restrictions.
People are not well during this time. People are exhausted. People are feeling overworked. People are overworked.
Many of Woods' patients suffer from depression, anxiety, and PTSD. Among her patients are nurses and other medical professionals who are seeking help managing their own mental health. A recent study by the American Psychological Association says prolonged exposure to pandemic stressors is taking a toll. More than 50% of essential workers said they relied on a lot of unhealthy habits to get through the pandemic. Nearly a third said their mental health has worsened. Woods, who shares a studio apartment with their 12-year-old son, Justin, said she is doing her best not to feel overwhelmed.
I've never seen him so down and so sad. And I think just the natural reflex of any mother, right, is to figure out how to make your baby better.
To help support her son and her clients, Woods said she has made self-care a priority. In addition, Woods said roller skating has given her consistent moments of joy. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
A new study says even as lockdowns weaken, many shoppers will keep shopping online. This means thousands of stores could close even after the pandemic. NTD's Colin Fredrickson reports.
Tens of thousands of physical stores may shut even after the pandemic because shoppers continue buying online.
I'm shopping from bed at midnight before I fall asleep, thinking, buying the things that I might need for the morning.
A new study says around 9% of stores may close in the next 5 years. The hardest hit may be clothing and sports stores.
I live in New York City, and New York City is one of those places where you just go see entire avenues devoid of brick and mortar shops that were there 5 years ago.
Stores paid more attention to their online services during the pandemic. However, even with things opening up, shoppers are generally slow to return to physical stores.
I broker quite a bit of retail myself. There's a plethora of vacancies. Corrections and price discovery are still underway, I would say. It depends on who you ask. If somebody's trying to sell doom and gloom or otherwise, I think retail is always going to have a necessary function.
Numerous major retailers filed for bankruptcy last year, including JCPenney, Lord & Taylor, and Modell's Sporting Goods.
The retail shuffle has been happening for a considerable period of time, from the last 5 to 10 years, but it just really accelerated from the pandemic.
The only retail category maintaining their number of locations is auto parts retail.
We see a large increase in demand for aftermarket or anything related to improving a vehicle. Everybody wants to get out and get ready for the summertime.
Analysts say auto parts sales reached an all-time high in 2020. Although more people are buying online, many services still need to be performed in person. Colin Fredrickson, NTD News.
And up next, a controversial crime bill in California was voted down. Under the bill, criteria for petty theft and misdemeanors would be changed. And a watchdog group finds that Los Angeles lifeguards make enormous salaries. Some of them get paid as much as the president. Find out more on NTD News.
When the game's over and it's time to go home, sometimes your car has other plans. That's why I drive with CarShield. As expensive as car repairs can be, I wanted the best defense around. And with CarShield's administrators, they make sure that you don't get stuck with expensive car repairs like this. Did I forget to mention that with CarShield's network, I also get 24/7 roadside assistance, towing, and rental car reimbursement included. That's peace of mind every driver needs.
I saved close to $9,000.
If it wasn't for CarShield, I wouldn't have my car.
I gotta tell you, it's quite a relief not to worry about expensive car breakdowns anymore. And with CarShield's administrators, you can choose your favorite mechanic or dealer to do the work. Plus, it's easier than ever to get America's favorite car protection. There's no long-term contracts, and coverage is affordable for every wallet size.
If I didn't have CarShield, I would have been out of pocket $7,000. As a parent of 3, I couldn't have that.
I trust CarShield administrators because they paid my claim.
Talk about MVP protection for less than the cost of a ball game. Take it from me, the boomer. Nobody wants to go through the headache of an expensive car breakdown on their own.
If you're driving without a warranty, you have to call CarShield.
Yeah, you do.
So do yourself and your car a favor. Call CarShield. They're your best line of defense against expensive breakdowns.
CarShield administrators paid almost $4,000 for my repairs.
CarShield is wonderful. They saved me $1,300.
With CarShield, I saved $4,100 on my first repair.
Over 1 million happy drivers couldn't be wrong. Call CarShield now.
Protect yourself now against expensive auto repair bills. Call CarShield for a free and instant protection plan quote. Once your car breaks down, it's too late. Call 800-781-2990, 800-781-2990, 800-781-2990.
A California prosecutor is filing charges against America's largest utility company for the fire that injured 6 firefighters. The October 2019 Kincaid fire north of San Francisco destroyed almost 400 buildings and caused the evacuation of entire towns of people. The fire was caused by high winds that snapped a transmission cable. Melting material then dropped onto the vegetation below and spread the blaze. It took 15 days to contain. Pacific Gas and Electric acknowledged that it was transmission lines that sparked the fire, but denied it committed any crimes. Despite that, the company says it will work to do what's right for the victims. A California crime bill that would have redefined the meaning of violent robbery was voted down on Monday. We hear more from the Senate hearing and NTD's David Lamb.
A proposed California crime bill did not pass the California Senate on Monday. The Senate Appropriations Committee, in a 7-0 vote, placed Senate Bill 82 on suspense file. SB 82's author said the bill would clarify what's meant by nonviolent crimes so they don't get charged as violent felonies. The maximum penalty for these robberies would decrease to 1 year in county jail. During the Senate hearing, it was met with heavy opposition.
The fiscal impact of SB 82 will be that it will tell every thief in California that you can use force to steal, and as long as you don't inflict great bodily injury, you will get a misdemeanor petty theft.
The bill would have allowed many robberies to be downgraded from a felony to a misdemeanor.
Misdemeanor petty thefts don't deter serious thieves. We have the testimony from the thieves themselves that establish that.
Cousins says it will cause an increase in robberies and costs.
If this caused a 10% increase in robberies, the marginal cost for police response would be an additional annual cost of $7.98 million. That would be conservative. That's a national average.
The controversial crime bill is now on the shelf. It comes as the nation saw increased robberies in recent months. David Lamb, NTD News, California.
How are your swimming skills? I ask because the top paid lifeguard in LA is raking in almost $400,000 a year. Is that enough to make you want to change careers? Here's NTD's Colin Fredrickson with the report.
Government spending watchdog OpenTheBooks.com has found that dozens of lifeguards in LA County are making six figures per year, or at least they did in 2019, the most recent year available.
These LA County lifeguards are making a lot of money. To put their pay in perspective, the LA County lifeguards' $392,000 pay rivals the salary of the President of the United States, who makes $400,000.
7 lifeguards made more than $300,000, while 82 lifeguards each made over $200,000. Over 30 lifeguards made six figures in overtime pay alone. They're part of the LA County Fire Department and are considered first responders.
So these lifeguards are actually Los Angeles County employees. And so they're paid for by the taxpayers of LA County. And let's face it, these lifeguards in LA, they're milking their taxpayers like dairy cows.
Most of the highest paid lifeguards were men. OpenTheBooks.com also found that Medal of Valor winners didn't necessarily make more money for saving lives, but they were still making six figures.
We think it's outrageous. These positions are highly coveted. Every single year, thousands of people try out for the new spots, lifeguard corps on the LA County beaches. There is no way taxpayers need to be paying this type of salary.
The watchdog also found that lifeguards made a lot more at the beach than at the pool. The highest paid pool lifeguards made about $47,000. OpenTheBooks.com got their numbers from Freedom of Information Act requests and data listed at Transparent California. We reached out to the LA County Fire Department and various lifeguards, but no one was willing to comment. Colin Fredrickson, NTD News.
There's a shortage of one of America's favorite condiments, ketchup. Because restaurants relied heavily on takeout orders during the pandemic, that caused a need for more ketchup packets. But once those started running low, some eateries began pouring out bulk ketchup into individual cups. The Wall Street Journal reports that low inventory of ketchup is hitting mom-and-pop restaurants as well as bigger chains. According to restaurant business platform Plate IQ, the ketchup shortage caused packet prices to rise 13% since January 2020. But there is some good news. USA Today reports that America's most popular brand, Heinz, is working to increase its supplies to produce 12 billion packets a year. California's Carlsbad flower fields are in full bloom. The beautiful, bright colors are attracting visitors like bees. NTD's Eileen Eng has that story.
Because of pandemic restrictions, Carlsbad flower fields wasn't open to the public last year. As restrictions ease, this year the fields are seeing a swarm of people.
The thing that I love most and I missed the most about last year was really seeing the experience and realizing the experience that the color brings to the guest. There's so much joy and happiness that occur when people immerse themselves and when they immerse themselves in this kind of color.
Located north of San Diego, the flower fields showcase more than 70 million flowers and span 50 acres. It attracts people from near and far.
Everyone feels so connected and everyone's just so happy, like everyone's just enjoying the flowers and it just feels like normal.
It does feel like things are easing a little bit. It's just great to see the beauty and just get out and
enjoy a day with my wife.
I've never seen anything like this before. I'm from Georgia, and we have, fields of all kinds of things, but I've never really been this close to like a field of flowers. So it's really cool to be out here and see all of this. And like everything's so neat and organized and pretty. Yeah, love it.
It's nice to be out again and out in the public, seeing flowers, and it's just fun to be out again.
I feel like we haven't really done very much at all this past year, so this is one of our first things that we've been going out to do.
Yeah.
The farm breeds its own variety of ranunculus that will end up in flower shops and supermarkets.
We're hybridizing ranunculus and every year trying to improve the quality, the size of the flower, the brightness of the color, the uniformity of the crop. And so every year we believe it's getting better and better and better.
Carlsbad flower fields are open to the public until May 9th. Eileen Eng, NTD News, California.
Cornell is saying no to a partnership with China. This is after professors and students push back against Chinese influence at the university. And tensions are high over the Indo-Pacific region. As the Chinese military conducts drills near Taiwan, a U.S. warship enters waters near Shanghai. That and more on NTD News. Professors at Cornell University rejected the school's proposal for a Beijing-funded program. We look at some of the reasons behind this.
The Cornell Faculty Senate last Wednesday rejected a resolution endorsing a partnership proposal with Peking University. Student leaders at Cornell also unanimously voted to demand that the partnership stop. Both groups voiced concern for human rights abuses in China, especially genocide in Xinjiang, as well as the risks to academic freedom.
Could you imagine such a regime in which academic freedom also existed? And that problem is so serious that we tend to combine the two.
The partnership proposed involved a joint degree program paid for by the Chinese Ministry of Education. The Washington Free Beacon reports that in the 5 years to 2019, Cornell raised at least $27 million from China. According to the outlet, the new partnership with Peking University could bring in up to an additional $1 million annually. However, some professors worry that their institution values lucrative relationships more than their moral principles.
In effect, many faculty felt that the Chinese government was purchasing the legitimacy that a connection to Cornell would offer.
In recent years, the U.S. has become increasingly concerned about influences from the Chinese regime coming into American campuses, with the government and other institutions considering especially how to maintain academic freedom.
We just have to cut ties with China. That means, for instance, no Confucius Institutes. That means no joint programs with China. And that means no Chinese campuses of American universities in China.
Bensel and another faculty member introduced new resolutions that will strengthen the role of the Faculty Senate in deciding future partnerships with all authoritarian countries. The voting for those resolutions is set to conclude Wednesday. They say they are optimistic.
As tensions are rising in the Indo-Pacific region, a U.S. warship has entered the East China Sea. It came close to an area near Shanghai. NTD's Tiffany Meyer brings us more on the story.
Some updates on U.S. activities in the Indo-Pacific. Tensions are rising in waters surrounding China. Last Sunday, a group of U.S. aircraft carriers and warships entered the South China Sea. A day before that, a U.S. destroyer entered the East China Sea. The warship also went near the Yangtze River estuary. That's where China's biggest city, Shanghai, is located. The warship then marched south. In the south is Taiwan, and Beijing has been flexing its muscles at the island. A Chinese think tank says the U.S. destroyer was targeting the East China Sea as it's headed towards this area right after it left Japan. The U.S. military's move comes after a Chinese aircraft carrier passed through an important Japanese waterway. The Chinese carrier was on its way to conduct drills around Taiwan. The Quad Alliance, consisting of the U.S., Japan, India, and Australia, is joining a military exercise led by France. The five nations say they are trying to improve maritime security in the Indo-Pacific in order to confront Beijing's aggression. The exercise is held in the Bay of Bengal from April 5th to 7th. When it first started in 2019, only the U.S., Japan, Australia, and France participated. But this time, India is also joining for the first time. The French embassy in India says this is an opportunity to promote cooperations in a free and open Indo-Pacific. China Affairs commentator Wang He told the Epoch Times he thinks there are two factors behind India's decision to join. The first is India's border conflict with Beijing last year. The second is France's deeper cooperation with India in the Indo-Pacific. 30% of global trade goes through the Indo-Pacific, but Beijing's militarization of the South China Sea may seriously threaten freedom of navigation there. French media FRI says both France and the Quad countries feel the growing threat of Communist China in the region. The Chinese regime sent out over 380 warplanes to the Taiwan Strait last year. The number is even higher this year. Meanwhile, in the South China Sea since early March, the regime has sent out more than 220 Chinese fishing boats to Philippines' claimed waters. The move again escalated tensions between the two countries. At the same time, it sent out Coast Guard vessels to the Japan-claimed Senkaku Islands in the East China Sea. Germany seems to be getting more serious about countering Communist China. The country's defense minister described the communist country as a very power-conscious state, not only when it comes to its economic interests and its immediate regional neighbors. She said this in an interview with German media R&D last Saturday. She added, China clearly claims to shape the world order in its own way and to force the weaker to behave in a certain way. We, that is to say Europe and the West, must not be the weaker ones. Later this month, Germany's foreign minister and defense minister will meet with their Japanese counterparts. The meeting will focus on the increasing aggression of the CCP in the Indo-Pacific region. This will be the first meeting of this kind between the two countries. And in August, a German warship is set to cross the South China Sea. This will be the first time in almost 2 decades.
A Brookings scholar just published a new book on U.S. competition with China. He suggests the U.S. can influence China by strengthening American values.
Ryan Hass is the Brookings Institution's senior fellow focusing on China and Asia. In a discussion about his new book today, he suggested that if the U.S. strengthens its position on China, it will gain more influence there. The U.S. government recognizes that the Chinese Communist Party is committing genocide. Hass says the U.S. should let China know they will pay a price for continuing on the current course.
We just need to speak out clearly and consistently at all levels, bilaterally, multilaterally, privately, publicly, at the presidential level and every level below it, about the strength of our concerns about these issues, and the fact that as long as there is a shadow cast over the relationship by events in Xinjiang, it's going to be impossible for the relationship to return to any type of equilibrium that Beijing may seek.
Hass says there are fundamental differences between the U.S. and CCP views, and that if the U.S. lives up to its values, it will naturally strengthen its power. He also said it is important to let the Chinese people see the U.S. support for their efforts and their concerns.
It relates to Uyghurs, but it goes beyond that, to things like access to educational opportunity, to freedom of information, to air quality, water safety. The more goodwill the United States enjoys among the Chinese people inside China, the costlier it is for the Chinese leadership to take actions that clearly undermine the U.S.-China relationship.
Coming up, as European governments consider rolling out vaccine passports, people in France remain divided about the measure. And a big win for cheesemakers on the island of Cyprus. The European Union is giving protected status to one kind of cheese that's said to have started there 1,500 years ago. Find out more on NTD News.
If you're like me, and I think it's actually most of us, then you're getting really fed up with the nonsense going on inside the banking system. I mean, we've worked hard our entire lives to retire comfortably. We just recovered from the crash of 2008, and it seems like it's about to happen all over again. Look at the too-big-to-fail banks. They're only getting bigger as the Fed hands them trillions of dollars daily, while simple folks like you and me, we're only getting the short end of the stick. That's why I'm glad I found this book called The Bank Failure Survival Guide. Give us a call, and we'll send you a free copy with no obligations whatsoever, just one American to another, telling you about some options that you might not have considered. Call 866 866-239-2619 today for your free copy of the Bank Failure Survival Guide. That's 866-239-2619.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and fight-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format, where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
Now let's go over to Europe. Some European countries are looking forward to creating a green passport, also known as a vaccine passport. But in France, public opinion shows opposition to the idea. NTD's David Vives has more.
People in bars and restaurants, without masks. Over the past few weeks, pictures from Israel showing the end of lockdown are making the French wonder when life will be back to normal again. But people are divided over the vaccine passport, or green passport. This passport would be delivered to vaccinated people, and it would allow them to enter venues, bars, restaurants, etc.
I don't think people are suspicious, they are prudent. They have all the right to be so on this.
Other European countries are seeking to implement the green passport or similar measures. The UK government is studying proposals for COVID status certificates. And Denmark will use an app which would be linked to a secure digital ID system, listing an individual's health records and test results. In France, a poll by a government agency shows more than 2/3 of the public is very opposed to the measure. Dr. Louis Fouché says this is simply violating human rights.
Some said at one time we should do a passport for people infected with AIDS. It wasn't done. It wasn't done for any disease. The COVID passport must not be done. This goes against human rights. Where will it end? Do you smoke? Don't go to the butcher. Do you drink? Don't go to the hairdresser. You have a sore throat? Don't go to school. Wise people, philosophers, historians warned us in the past that this is how dictatorship begins.
Moreover, the green passport hasn't been recommended by the WHO. A spokesperson of the organization said on Tuesday they are still not sure whether the vaccine prevents virus transmission. She also mentioned concerns over equity on the measure. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
An airline boss is criticizing the UK government's plan to restart travel. The CEO of EasyJet has questioned the use of costly PCR tests, which will be mandatory when traveling to low-risk countries. NTD's Neil Woodrow brings us more.
EasyJet's CEO says the cost of a PCR test exceeds that of an average EasyJet ticket. He says many families then couldn't afford international travel. A PCR test is used to help identify virus variants. On Tuesday, in response, the Prime Minister said,
I do think we want to make things as easy as we possibly can. I think there is the boss of EasyJet is right to focus on this issue. We're going to see what we can do to make things as flexible and as affordable as possible.
EasyJet's CEO suggests the use of rapid tests instead. These cheaper alternatives are being rolled out to all in England for free from Friday.
We have to be realistic. A lot of the destinations that we want to go to at the moment are suffering a new wave of the illness of COVID, as we know. It's not going to, we can't do it immediately. But that doesn't mean that we've given up on May the 17th.
The 17th of May is the date the government said it would permit the public to travel again for recreational purposes. It said on Monday its Global Travel Task Force will set out plans for this well before the 17th and give further details then of the new risk-based traffic light system. For green countries, there's no isolation requirement on return to the UK. For the current red list, there is. And an amber category is added for countries in between. Risk is based on countries' COVID-19 vaccinations, infection rates and the prevalence of virus variants. Further criticism came from London International Airport Heathrow CEO, saying the aviation industry needs a clearer timeline. Everyone wishing to go abroad is hoping for good news before May 17th. For the moment, the government advises people not to book summer holidays abroad until the picture is clearer. Neil Woodrow, NTD News, Epsom, Surrey.
And the cold snap that brought snow to parts of the UK on Monday is flowing over into Europe. Spring flowers were covered in snow Tuesday morning in Brussels after a rare April snow dusted the city overnight. Snow flurries are forecast to continue through Wednesday. Plunging temperatures were expected in many parts of Europe through to Wednesday. Cyprus is getting protected status for its prized halloumi. This gives its producers the sole right to sell the rubbery cheese in the European Union.
Makers of Cyprus's hallowed halloumi cheese can breathe a sigh of relief. No one but them will be allowed to sell the rubbery, salty and much-loved dairy product within the EU after it receives protected status later this month. Cheesemaker George Petrou said this reaffirms what the industry has been saying for years, that halloumi is Cypriot, potentially dating back as far as 1500.
Unfortunately, in recent years, many countries tried to copy us. So the registration for this status, this result that we have today, will help very much in that other countries will not produce halloumi or something similar, which misleads customers.
Petrou first started selling halloumi in 1982, using 250 litres of milk a day. Now his company processes 250 tonnes of milk per day, employs 220 people and exports to 40 countries. His expansion mirrors that of Cyprus halloumi production itself. The rubbery cheese is now the country's second most valuable export after pharmaceuticals. The industry has grown between 20 to 22% annually for the past 5 years, according to official data. Disagreement on the recipe was a hurdle in securing the protected status. The ratios of different milks has been the center of debate. It will be set by decree until 2024. After that, at least 50% will be made up of sheep and goat's milk, with the rest supplemented by cow's milk.
Coming up, NASA prepares to test a helicopter on Mars. It could be another Wright brothers moment on a new planet. That and more on NTD News. NASA is planning the first flight of its experimental Martian helicopter as soon as this weekend. The mission could mark the first powered, controlled flight on another planet. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
NASA's newest Mars rover, Perseverance, has been the star of the Red Planet recently. But before the car-sized vehicle can head for an ancient river delta to collect rocks for eventual return to Earth, it must release an experimental helicopter named Ingenuity. NASA said it's targeting a first flight as soon as April 11th.
From day one, this was the unwavering dream of our team, to get our helicopter launched to Mars so that we can get that opportunity to do the very first rotorcraft flight test in the actual environment of Mars.
One of the biggest challenges scientists and engineers face is how to get the helicopter off the ground in the Martian environment. Atmospheric pressure on the Red Planet is very low, about 1% of that on Earth. The attempt could mark the first powered, controlled flight on another planet. In fact, the Mars helicopter holds a piece of the Wright brothers' first airplane, a small piece of fabric from the 1903 Wright Flyer.
Sometimes, you have to do something just to show that you can do it.
in order to show that it's possible. And so when the Wright brothers, flew for the first time, they didn't fly a fully equipped passenger airplane. They flew an experimental aircraft.
NASA's 4-pound helicopter will attempt to rise 10 feet into the extremely thin Martian air on its first hop. If Ingenuity is successful during its 31-day experimental trip, the small helicopter will prove that powered flights can be accomplished on Mars. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Spring is in the air, and for many animals, that signals the arrival of adorable young ones. 2 baby giraffes, one male and one female, were born nearly back-to-back at a Miami zoo. They're the 54th and 55th giraffes born in the zoo's history. The male was born on April 2nd. He doesn't have a name just yet. He weighed 181 pounds and is the 7th baby born to 14-year-old mother Mia. While he was making his exhibit debut, another giraffe was born at the zoo, a female, weighing in at 119 pounds. Let's turn our attention to health and well-being now. Just as smoking accelerates aging, eating some foods can slow it. Here's our health reporter Gina with the details.
Welcome to Strong Mind and Body. I'm Gina Marie. In some ways, anti-aging is a hopeless pursuit. We all inevitably age. Well, if we're lucky, we'll eventually kick the bucket too. That's just how life works. We can't be young and vibrant without the inevitable keeping it all in balance. However, that doesn't mean that we have to grow old in an unhealthy way. In fact, the way we treat our bodies throughout our entire lives can greatly impact the aging process. Diet, of course, plays a monumental role in that regard, but can eating anti-aging foods really help? When it comes to anti-aging, there's no question that there are habits that will drastically speed up the aging process. These include smoking, drinking too much alcohol, and eating foods that are high in sodium, sugar, and trans fats. But eating foods that are high enough in phytonutrients like flavonoids and carotenoids, those are antioxidants found in a number of fruits and vegetables, they can help you with anti-aging and keep you feeling energetic and healthy. A good rule of thumb to remember is to make sure that you're getting plenty of fresh fruits and or vegetables at every meal. The more you add these foods into your diet, the less room you'll have for the stuff that's not so healthy. So what makes these foods such anti-aging treats? Credit the high levels of antioxidants, vitamins like A, C, E, and K, resveratrol, and healthy fats. Here are some fruits, vegetables, and other foods that will help your body resist the effects of aging. Blueberries, cranberries, apples, avocados, melons, winter squash, citrus fruits, tomatoes, olives, pomegranates, and dark chocolate. Vegetables include carrots, sweet potatoes, kale, spinach, cabbage, lettuces, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, and beets. And let's look at a couple of miscellaneous items: raw nuts, beans, green tea, wheatgrass juice, whole grains, and seeds. So that was a few ideas, but a couple more tips on anti-aging. Carrying excess fat around your waist is an issue. Your body is likely inflamed and your risk for heart disease and diabetes is higher. To reduce this, try to include more activity throughout the day, walking for about an hour at least 3 times per week. Another issue is feeling the need to sit down most hours of the day. Sitting for more than 6 hours per day can worsen symptoms of existing illness while leading to weight gain that further increases inflammation. If you are always tired, you may want to try implementing sleep hygiene or dietary changes. And last but not least is frequent troubles with digestion. Regular diarrhea, cramps, or bloating can signify that your gut is in trouble, especially if it's happening after nearly every meal. Poor gut health can be a sign of inflammation, which means your immune system is heavily taxed. You can fight against this by including more fiber-rich fruits and vegetables, along with probiotic foods into your diet. Thanks for watching.
And that's all for now. Catch us again tonight at 6:30 Eastern. In New York City, I'm Kevin Hogan.
have a new channel. Subscribe to us on YouTube at NTD News. Get the highlights of our news broadcast and the most important headlines that we curate especially for you.
Don't miss out on important news. Our videos are being deleted. So if you don't want to be cut off from honest news, take a moment to sign up for our newsletter at newsletter.ntd.com so you don't lose access to NTD. Go to newsletter.ntd.com to sign up for our evening newsletter.